Great. We're good? Hi, good morning. Welcome to our in-store seminar, and we're also live on Facebook and Instagram, so we're all famous here. We are going to be discussing Plumerias today, and it's really nice to have a lot of people here considering the fact that it's raining right now and not really Plumeria style weather, but we're going to get to that. I'm trying to think. I'm Suzanne. This is Sarah, and we are both horticulturists here at Rogers Gardens, and we do our seminars twice a month. First seminar is always what to do in your garden for that month, and then the second seminar is obviously something a little more fun and specific. So we're going to be just talking. Sarah's going to kind of start us off with history and information.
Yeah. So. Plumerias, obviously you're all Plumeria fans, right? Yeah, I thought so. If you're coming out in this weather, you're definitely a fan. You're just like
must be.
Like, I don't
yes.
So does anybody know like history about Plumerias, like where they came from, all the kind of weird? There's a lot of weird myths and facts and all kinds of crazy things about Plumerias. Even some stuff that I didn't know. As I was researching for this, I was like, oh wow, that's interesting. So first off, Plumerias are not native to Hawaii. Even though you see them all over in Hawaii all the time, they weren't introduced until 1806 by a German botanist. He brought them over there, and now they've naturalized there, but they did not originate there. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I had no idea. They are native to Central America areas, so Brazil and Mexico, places like that. They are
and the Caribbean and yeah. So from Mexico down, I would say. Yeah.
But so that's kind of interesting that they're not. Oh, and the hummingbirds.
Okay.
So hummingbirds like the Plumeria, so we'll probably get visited at some point today.
Do you know my favorite thing about the Plumerias?
Yeah.
Well, there's actually two, but my favorite thing is that they're the national flower of Laos, which is pretty fascinating considering it's not a natural plant there.
No.
It was naturalized, and our customer support person, Home, is from Laos. Yeah. Oh, there he is right there. Yeah. And he's from Laos, and he said that he could climb them when he was there. That's how big they get, so that's really cool.
Some of them do get very, very large. I've seen some around here. There's one in Costa Mesa that I drive by all the time that's humongous. It's climbable for sure.
They can get really big.
Yeah, it's super, super pretty. Also, too, the name, some people call them frangipani, but there's been some discussion on how that's pronounced today. So it was frangipani or frangipani.
Frangipani.
Yeah, it was, that name actually is from a perfume that was made that was not supposed to smell like Plumerias, but did smell like Plumeria. So people started calling it after the name of the perfume, which is so funny.
Yeah, that was like in the 1600s, and then somebody brought a Plumeria back, and they said, "Oh my gosh, it smells just like Mr. Frangipani's perfume."
It was an Italian perfumer that made it. So there's discussion on how you say frangipani, frangipani. There's all kinds of different ways that people say it, but yeah. So it's kind of interesting how that name sort of morphed. Also, the white ones by some cultures are considered haunted, so they're planted in graveyards, typically the white ones. So the white ones in general, some cultures still consider the white ones to be haunted, possibly by ghosts of ancestors.
Yeah, they're called Singapore graveyard flowers.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing that I didn't know.
It's very Halloween-esque.
Yeah, very Halloween-esque, although you don't think of white as being very creepy, but the white ones are sometimes considered haunted, which I think is kind of interesting. So now I really want a white one. I don't have one. I just want to see. So I just thought some of those facts are really kind of interesting about them. There's more to them than just the Hawaiian leis and being a tropical beauty, even though they are. There's a lot of interesting cultural myths and ideas and notions around them and history about them. I just thought was very, very interesting.
And of course, they're from a business standpoint, they're grown primarily on the island of Molokai, which I didn't know that either, as for leis in Hawaii. So if everybody's always like, oh, I wish I could go to Molokai. No, Plumerias. Only Plumerias can go there.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
This pudica, which is kind of a more rare one, you can see it has truly unique leaves and just a white flower. So that's a pretty cool one. I love that nobody has bought them until they started blooming, and now they're just like flying out of here. But they're really, really pretty. They have a leaf similar to a jatropha. If you know those, they're kind of like weird dinosaur style leaves. And then there is a variety called the obtusa. They're more of an evergreen variety. You'll see them here. They have a very ovular leaf, so not pointy at the end. And they're really cool, super, they're evergreen, primarily a little bit hardier, but these are the rubra, and these are the ones that people like because of all the different colors and varieties you can get. So of course we're going to be talking a lot about these. We have standard varieties, and we also have the dwarf varieties. The dwarf varieties will get probably about 4 to 6 feet. They usually will not seed. They're usually very sterile, and they're not usually as fragrant as the standard ones. The white flowers on Plumerias are usually the most fragrant. I know it's really neat to see all the different colors, but honestly, when you come up here, there's one over there, that one, sensational. And it is no joke. It is amazingly fragrant, but I've seen some really tiny little white ones. There's one called Aztec Gold, which we don't have right now. Aztec Gold is so fragrant. It's really, really great. But a lot of these more colorful ones are actually a little, I don't want to say delicate, but they're just not quite as hardy and strong as the white ones. So if you're looking for beauty and smallness, go with the little dwarf ones. But if you want like a big strong plant, go with a white flowered one. Even the cardinal here, this red one, it's great, but it's not going to be as robust as some of the bigger ones. They can get really big, but it'll take a lot longer.
They usually smell much better at nighttime. There's a reason for that.
They do. Yeah. They are. Well, they'll smell a little bit in the morning, and of course during the day. But at nighttime is when they really, really shine, and that's because they are pollinated primarily by sphinx moths, and they're also by hummingbirds and butterflies, but primarily by these nighttime sphinx moths, which are really funny. They are so gorgeous and so beautiful, but they come from the hornworms that nobody likes during the day, on their vegetables.
I actually caught one the other day. I was raking it, was on the ground. I accidentally raked it was down on the ground, and I picked it up, and it was like as big as
a
my two
hummingbird.
hands together.
Wow.
I had gloves on. I don't think I would have picked that up without gloves on. Even me, I'm
For
like,
fear that it was going to bite you.
There's something about touching it, but I mean, they are almost as big as hummingbirds. It's really pretty amazing. Really furry, heavy, and substantial. It was heavy.
Yeah.
It was very heavy, and
they're
I
like
picked him up, and
hummingbirds.
he kind of shook it off and flew off, and you probably got a good picture.
Yeah, it's really beautiful to go out at nighttime and see the sphinx moths that are kind of like
about that
these
size.
guys. Yeah.
Seriously.
There was something, I can't remember, Ron might remember, but maybe not. We used to have a plant way up in the front. It was like an annual plant, and every night at about 5 o'clock, all these sphinx moths would come out and just be crazy all over it, like 20 of them, and it was a really beautiful sight. But the hornworms are kind of not fun. So it's like, it's a balance. Like if you have tomatoes, you don't want hornworms, but the sphinx moths are so beautiful. Okay, so there's that. What are we talking about next?
So watering.
Watering. Mm-hmm. All right. Watering. I guess we should have started with this whole thing. People think that plumerias are really hard to grow. And we are here to tell you they are not. They almost thrive on neglect. So a lot of people have a tendency to really care too deeply for their plants. Plumeria is definitely one you can kind of ignore. Not completely and fully, but really it almost does better. I always tell the story. I used to live in a place, and my next door neighbor used to take plumeria cuttings from everyone in the neighborhood, and he would propagate them, and he had a whole backyard filled with plumerias. Well, he passed away, and his daughter came over and said, if anybody wants any plumerias, come on over. And he had them sitting in buckets with no soil whatsoever. None. There was no water in the bucket. There was nothing. There was like hundreds of cuttings, and they were all just growing crazy big as this, and just doing well. So put that in the back of your head. Thrive on almost total neglect. But if you want to have a lot of beautiful, beautiful flowers, you will water them regularly. And so don't let it dry out in between, but almost. You want to keep it like a wrung out sponge. And then when you see these containers here, and you see all the white perlite on the top here, this stuff. Perlite is there for drainage, and we'll go back to the Hawaii thing, where the reason people say, "What? Only water it once a week," but it rains every day in Hawaii, right? Well, there's also volcanic soil in Hawaii, and it just percolates down and goes out, and it's gone. So keep that in mind. Here, our soil is going to hold that moisture a lot better. And if you add pumice, or as Frangipani calls it, pumice, you can put that in your soil, whether it's in the ground or in a pot. I personally like pumice better than perlite in a pot. I hate when perlite goes up to the top like this, because every time you water it, it goes everywhere. But it is really, really good for your plants for that drainage. You need tons and tons of drainage. Don't stick it directly into your heavy clay soil unless you're prepared to not water it. It's just, you'll water it occasionally, but that clay soil holds moisture like nothing else. And so just make sure if you're putting it in the ground, you're going to dig a nice big hole. You're going to put some pumice, even perlite in there if you like. And then you're going to throw in the cactus mix, which has tons of pumice in it. It's super good for drainage. So it's not just good for cactus, it's also good for plumerias that are almost similar to succulents in their water needs. People think succulents don't need to be watered, but it's the same thing. They can live off of themselves. You don't want them to. You want them to stay nice and big and just, plump and succulent. If you don't water them, they will, kind of shrivel up and live on themselves. It's not really healthy for them or for succulents, but that's...
Yeah, you'll almost notice that the stem gets wrinkly, and that's when it's being neglected too much. If you're planting them in pots too, they do great in containers. Just the cactus mix is all that you need. It's all totally mixed up in the perfect kind of texture and drainage that they need.
And also overwatering can really be bad for a plumeria. It will get root rot, and it's almost, you cannot turn back from that. Once it starts rotting, it's done. You can't even really usually cut it off and try and redo it. Its circulatory system it's failed. Yeah. So try really hard not to overwater them.
Yeah. You can come back from underwatering, but you can't come back from overwatering.
Right.
Once rot sets in, it's done for, basically.
It's really, really bad. Okay.
Yeah. So fertilizing. So once you get your watering down and you get your soil correct and you get it in a happy spot, sun. They do like the sun. Make sure that it's not too shaded. If it's too shaded, it's going to get super linky and you're not going to get any flowers on it. You want to make sure that you're fertilizing it. There's 2 different fertilizers that we recommend. So these ones are nice. You mix them up with water. They're very, very simple. This is the all-purpose fertilizer. In the beginning, when it starts coming out with some of its not its flowers, but its leaves, because they do go totally dormant. So we get calls all the time where like, my leaves are falling off. It's supposed to. So they totally lose all their leaves. They're going to slowly stop flowering, then you're going to start losing some of your leaves. The obtusa one doesn't lose its leaves, so depending on the variety.
But if the winter is really warm, mild, keep in mind it's going to take a long time. And it could eventually, it's really funny.
You just have some on the top sometimes.
Yeah, you'll have old leaves and new leaves, but eventually those old leaves will come off. It's Southern California.
Yeah, so in the beginning when they first start flushing out, you want to use the flowering formula. The flowering formula, if you look at the numbers, there's 3 different numbers. It's 4, 26, 26. So that middle number is all about getting it established and getting the flowers started for the new year. Once they've kind of slowed down on flowering, I would say even probably next month would be when you would switch over to the all-purpose. The all-purpose is just going to get rid of everything that it needs to get through until it starts losing the leaves. And when it stops losing the leaves, that's when you can stop fertilizing.
And okay, I'm going to be completely honest and tell you, you actually don't even need to fertilize.
Kind of true.
They will do what they're going to do. It's just going to maybe not be quite as fabulous or quite as whatever, but they're almost like a succulent in that they're going to leaf out, they're going to flower as long as they have sunlight. and then they're going to go dormant. But if you do want to have like that spectacular look, you can, instead of using this fertilizer once a month as it's recommended, which is perfectly fine, you can dilute it. So dilute it down a little bit and once a week put it in there, and you're going to really see a little bit of a difference. I know a lot of people who are really into Plumerias like to just push, and it's a light push. It's not a shove. It's just like a come on.
Especially if you have one that's not flowered for you yet too, and they're younger and you're trying to get them established. It's definitely a good thing to fertilize. The older they get though, the more they don't need anything.
Right, and just to keep in mind, if you've taken a cutting from a neighbor, it'll take a couple years before it flowers. So just be patient, and it will flower. It just takes a little while. And then, maybe we'll talk about just if it's a rare occurrence, but sometimes you'll get seeds on your Plumeria. And so it's a little thing, it looks kind of like that. It's like a little V-shaped thing. And so it will not flower, it will not seed until it is flowered. So that's a whole thing, and you can actually propagate your Plumerias from seeds, but just keep in mind if you're waiting and waiting, it could be forever. It could be like when we have people call us and they'll say, oh my gosh, my Plumeria has seeds, what do I do? You know, and so it's a rare occurrence, but if it does happen, it's pretty cool, but it will only happen after it's flowered.
These ones will probably seed, these ones probably won't seed for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then growing from seed, they don't always, if you do grow from seed, they're not always going to look like their parents.
Yeah,
So
they're
if you get a cutting, it will. That's, it's directly from it. But
they're like hybrid tomatoes.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not
So
cool
how
if
do
you
like
like
to
your
grow
tomatoes.
from seed, Suzanne?
Oh, well, so the seed pod will show up usually, I think in spring. I think it's in spring. But then it takes a long time, almost like 8 months to a year. You've got to let it dry, and then it's going to split open. And a lot of times people will put like a little net on it to catch all the seeds, but you want it to dry and split. And then you can harvest the seeds, and then you have to soak them in water for a while, and then you're going to put them in your planting mix. And just make sure, this is something I did not know, but you've got to make sure that the little seed husk comes off the little plant so that it doesn't strangle it, I guess.
I think I'd rather just do it for cutting.
It is really fun from cutting, and of course I think that is the best way. You'll see a beautiful Plumeria, and if you're very, very nice and you ask someone, may I please have a cutting? Sometimes they'll say no, but sometimes they'll say yes.
I think it's nice too, once you have a really big one, sharing it. It's really kind of cool. There's so many people out there who was like, this Plumeria was from my grandmother's mother's, now my plant. It's kind of neat that you can share them like that. I think that's a really interesting thing. So you can have sort of a history and have something sentimental from somebody. I think that's a really kind of nice thing. And it's going to be the same color. When you're taking a cutting, often people will, like your friend, have them in the pots and the containers for nothing. I have so many people who will cut it and then throw it straight in water, and then it rots it.
Yeah.
So you can't do that. They don't root like that.
They have to. They have to, yeah. So you can take a cutting and then cut it nice and clean. The plant will actually send out more from there. It's interesting that they won't flower unless it's cut or injured or something like that. They won't send out more shoots. But yeah, you need it to dry.
Yeah.
And then you'll put it in some lightly moist soil and just wait.
Yeah, that's the worst thing, is doing it straight from and throwing it in water. I've had multiple calls about that, where the first thing I ask them, they're like, I got a cutting and it's failing. Did you put it in water? Yep.
Yeah.
And especially right away. When you break off the branches, you notice that there's like a milky kind of substance from them too.
Yeah.
All the branches, the leaves, the flowers all have that milky kind of substance that a lot of people have issues with.
They do. It can give you like contact dermatitis, and it is, the plant is toxic, but it's not deadly. So it can be irritating. I know a lot of people, even like with euphorbias, which aren't in the same family, but euphorbias can be very, very, they can make some people's skin blister, just like this can as well. For me, I could probably use it as a lotion, but
it doesn't bug me either, and I'm pretty sensitive to
but
things.
some people are very, very sensitive. So just be super careful when you're breaking it, and
it should be fine.
Yeah, I don't really ever have any issues with that either. We pulled this one. I wanted to show you what, this one has gotten a little bit burned. So Plumerias can handle a lot of sunlight. Be cautious when you're buying them new and fresh like this, because often they're being grown in a greenhouse where they're covered. So it's just like taking a little baby from the incubator and throwing it on the beach. Good luck, baby. It's not going to be happy, right?
That's a terrible mental picture.
I was like, not a baby, not on the beach. Baby in a park?
Okay.
Anyways, just be aware that usually when you're buying them from a nursery, they've been grown in a greenhouse. It's just easier for the growers. It's easier for them to have control. It's easier for pest reasons, all those kind of things. It's not the way they're supposed to be grown forever, however. So these do want to be outside in full sun. But this guy here got sun exposure way too fast, and this is often what you see when you see burn. It's usually on the middle, highest raised part of the plant, and goes kind of yellow, and it almost seeps through to the other side. The cells in this have been damaged now from the sun. This leaf is never going to repair itself. However, you can burn a stem too. That is something that can happen, but you just have to be careful with them. Burning a stem is less common. If you start seeing something like this, try to maybe give it a little bit of an umbrella for a little bit until it kind of gets established. Once
in the
it
afternoon.
starts getting enough leaflets, you can pull this leaf off because it's never going to repair itself. But they also want to be a little cautious if you have a really, really full plumeria at home that's really leafed out and something that doesn't lose a lot of leaves. If you have one that doesn't go deciduous, be careful when you're cutting it. You don't want to cut it when it's too hot, because then you're exposing that stem again to sun that it's not used to. And if you're doing that on a 90-degree day in the full sun to give it to a friend, you might experience sunburn on your stem. However, that might make it put out more branches. So sometimes the damage can be kind of okay to a degree. It's weird how plants can self-heal and how they can,
procreate.
Yeah,
go on,
survive
propagate.
through the worst too.
So since we're talking about issues on plumerias, we're going to talk about pests. And for the most part, plumerias are usually fairly pest-free, but there are some things that you want to watch out for. And so we'll just start with like the easy stuff: mites, aphids, things like that. The best thing to do is to keep this area clean and dust free. So, while you're watering your plumeria, well, we're going to kind of go back to this in a minute, but you might want to hose it off and let it dry off. Don't do it in the evening so that when the water is going to just sit there, but hose it off to make sure that there's no dust in here. Spider mites love to just set up shop in a place like that, and they can do a lot of damage even when the plant is dormant. So just keep it clean, and you can use a little insecticidal soap if you have, a case of it. Insecticidal soap you might want to use in the evening so that it's nice and cool and quiet. Maybe you won't burn it. But then another problem which goes back to not getting water on the leaves is rust. So plumerias get a kind of rust, and so you're going to treat it kind of similarly to roses. You're going to have to defoliate it, and you're going to want to clean up the ground underneath, and then you're going to spray it with a liquid copper spray, a fungicide. We do have this other disease control, which is really good as well. I think if rust has been a problem throughout the season, you might want to, when the plant goes dormant, make sure that you treat it with the liquid copper spray and spray the ground. Make sure, because that's it's a spore, and so when you water, sometimes if you water on it can knock the spores up and it can go onto the plumeria. So just be real careful about getting water on the leaves too much unless you're washing it off.
Yeah, rust
to clean it off.
When you flip over the leaf, you'll typically see the rust on the bottom half of the leaf with plumeria. Just like little orange fuzzy specks.
Yeah.
Basically. Like rust.
It looks like rust.
On metal, which is kind of interesting. Sometimes powdery mildew, especially the more coastal you are, I find that you can't control the humidity, and that just becomes a problem. But the more inland you are, it doesn't seem to really be much of a problem.
And then the other problem, which I haven't seen a lot here, to be honest, and I have a lot of plumerias in my garden that I pretty much ignore. Sorry, because they do so well. But is black tip,
Yeah.
and so that'll come, literally at the tip. It's going to happen pretty quickly. And so the thing you should do is really just like cut it off. Just like get rid of it. It's not going to be easy to, you can't really cure it, so you might as well just amputate. Sorry, that's like, and if you only have one little plumeria like this, then that's not a good, it's not a good thing. But it looks exactly like black tip. There's no mistaking it.
What are these guys, Suzanne?
Oh gosh. Okay, so Ron's. So the Plumerias are in the Apocanaceae family. I know how to spell it. I just have a hard time rolling it off my tongue. Apocanaceae family. Apocanaceae family. There's a Y in there too. So they have that nice, beautiful, milky sap, as do these beautiful Adeniums. There are a lot of plants in this dogbane family. These, the Pachypodium that are from Africa, Madagascar area, things like that. But you can sort of tell how they're similar in this similar family. And these Adeniums have just come in. It's funny, people will wait and wait and wait for us to get these Adeniums. No one will buy them when they have no growth on them. But, you know, and you wait for the flower color and you just say, oh my gosh. But now, look at these things. They are so gorgeous. They come in a million colors. So they're kind of like a room style plumeria. You can keep these inside, you can keep them outside. Again, no direct sunlight. Right, Taylor? No direct.
These don't want direct sunlight. Taylor has a story about putting one right out in the full sun.
Yeah, so they can take morning sun, but not that super brutal afternoon sun. And these go very, very dormant, like as in they die back to like here. And it's really cute to see them come out again. And a lot of people collect these for the color because they're smaller. You can, we have some larger varieties over there, but for the most part, it's kind of a neat thing to collect because they stay so small.
I think the trunk is so interesting too. They almost seem like something bonsai.
This Codex. We have, I'm trying to think, we have another indoor plant that's like a ficus that has that cute little Codex
and a lot of times too, the way people pot them up with like stones and stuff, almost very bonsai-esque looking.
Yes,
because
very.
The trunk, as they get older, will start to divide. Like you can even see on this one, it's going to definitely do that. It has like multiple legs down here. So as they get bigger, that becomes more prominent and really, really interesting. If you go to any of the like plant shows and stuff, sometimes people will have these absolutely gorgeous, huge, humongous ones that they enter into different shows and stuff. And the flower is interesting, of course. Yeah, gorgeous. Some of them are really, really beautiful. But a lot of times it's about how interesting and gnarly and old and twisted that trunk kind of becomes over time.
And speaking of size, just real quickly, I think I talked about the dwarf ones will get about 4 to 6 feet, which is kind of cute for a patio or a balcony or something. The standard rubra will get, they can get 25 feet tall and wide. So obviously that's a lot of cuttings for your friends and family.
I can smell this one right now.
Yeah,
Even
I
though
told
it's
you
cold.
that one is amazing. That sensational is crazy. So anyway, you know, you can keep it in between. You can keep it on your balcony. You can make it big. You can put it in the ground and let it become almost a hedge. Isn't it gorgeous when you come across a plumeria and suddenly you're just like, oh my gosh, it'll be like July, it's blooming and it's like 15 feet tall and wide. There's just nothing more beautiful. So I think that's about it. Is there anything, do we have any questions? Oh,
Yes.
When you said they're poisonous or
toxic.
toxic,
A little toxic.
I have tortoises. If the flowers fall off and they eat them, will they?
I wouldn't,
She's wondering if the flowers fall because she has a turtle.
Tortoise.
Or tortoise. If they eat it, would it be an issue for them eating the flowers because there's a toxicity to them?
I would say probably. I don't know. I would check with your vet or something, but for the most part, the entire plant is not, it's not a great thing. It's,
They're in pots, so they're not, but sometimes
better safe than sorry,
Yeah.
I would say.
Good luck with that.
Okay, I'm going to go to this lady. Yes?
So I was given a plumeria that's about 4 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
I've had it for about a year. The person was moving and it's never flowered.
So she was given a Plumeria that's about 4 feet tall, and she's been moving. When did you get it?
About a year ago.
So as mentioned, the cuttings, usually they'll take 3 to 5 years before they're a flower.
But it wasn't a cutting, it was the whole
A whole plant, but it may have been, you know, cut even as a large plant. It could have been cut, and so give it like 3 to 5 years, and then if it's still not flowering, then you should really talk to
I
it.
think the main question, do you know if it flowered for the person who had it before you? Okay.
Yeah.
Because if it did, then that would be a different kind of story. But if it had never flowered for them either, it could be just an issue of being young, because they
could
get
be.
huge. I have a friend who inherited a really, really large one in the backyard of a house she just bought. And the lower branches, if I cut one of those lower branches, I could get a 4-foot piece off of that. But those lower branches have never flowered. Only the upper older branches have flowered on that. So I wouldn't expect mine, if I got a piece from her, to flower for another couple of years.
And it's in full sun and everything?
Yeah, that's important.
So-
It's in a large pot.
Yeah, it's funny. Sun is super important to Plumerias. I have a bunch of Plumerias that are kind of shoved back in the shade, and they take forever to bloom. And sometimes they don't even bloom because there's just not enough shade.
Enough sun.
So, yes?
Thank you. I have 3 of the dwarf varieties.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way, without damaging the plant, to keep them more like 3 to 4 feet instead of 4 to 6 feet?
So she has a dwarf, and she wants to know how to keep it more towards 3 feet than 4 feet.
Then 4 to 6 feet.
That's going to be a selective, like, yeah. So, okay, so you've got 3 branches here, and say this one's too tall for you. Wait until it's finished blooming, then you could cut it off if you like. That's really the only way to kind of keep it.
If it's forked off like that too, and a
Yeah,
longer piece,
you
can
could definitely
always
cut
take
that one off. You're gonna be, it's almost like, what is it, like Nandina, heavenly bamboo.
Yeah.
Heavenly bamboo is shortened merely by cutting one exact stem all the way down at the bottom.
So to keep it that way, as you were saying, is there a certain spot where I can cut it to keep it short and also to propagate? Is there a certain area where you can?
If you cut, like for example, if this was yours and you wanted to cut a piece off and you're trying to keep it short, and you cut this piece off right here, if you can see on this, it has 2 branches right here already. So this would be an ideal place to cut it down. This piece could be propagated easily if you let it wound over and give it to somebody, or
I would wait until this one gets a little bigger.
a little bit bigger, yeah.
Yeah.
This is too young to cut at this point. If you're trying to keep it this small, don't have a Plumeria. It's going to stay this small.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could cut here. I've seen people who have blunt cut these pieces. Sometimes too
And
they
then it'll
put,
send out.
Yeah, they'll put
Yeah,
like,
well,
almost
much
a
like
piece on it. Yeah.
much like the top
Yeah.
of this one.
You can see that there has, and sometimes they'll send out branches
Side
here.
branches.
And sometimes I see where they paint the top of it. I don't know if that's necessary.
I would think it would be if it was like right there, only because if it rains and water gets in there, sometimes
it's
a
flat.
disease can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I would wait too to do that. Don't do that when it's really leafed out. Make sure you're doing that when it's more on the dormant side. Also too, you're trying to keep it from getting super sunburned in like a hot time too.
Okay.
Yeah, the regular ones, will they branch out on their own, or do you need to trim them to get them to?
They will branch out.
Okay.
They will.
just leave them
Just be patient, and you'll see. Even like you can sort of see this one. It's been sort of trimmed back, but you can see there's always something going on. They will grow. People think, you know, how long will it take for it to get to this point? Plants grow faster than you think. When you're impatient, they are not going to grow fast enough. And if you just kind of focus yourself on other things, you're going to turn around and suddenly it's going to be big. And if I say, oh, well, in 5 years, this is going to be really quite large, people think 5 years. Well, that's not a long time in the life of an oak tree or something. So.
Yeah, this one's definitely an interesting one where you can see all the little, especially even down here, there's some potential for some branching even down this low.
Right.
So it's a good example of being able to see that.
And this one you can also see, you know, there's a lot going on this one here. Yes?
How easy is it to get the little one, the indoor one, to rebloom?
The Adenium, these bloom every year. they go dormant and they look like little stumps, and then they come out in the late spring with the flowers and the leaves. They're very, very easy, and they're very, very addictive too.
Do you keep watering them at normal through the dormant period?
No, you cut them back. Oh, so we can actually talk about watering here. And if there are people tuning in from someplace else, a cooler climate perhaps, dormancy is an important thing. So say you're living in, let's just say Wisconsin, and the summer's over, you're going to bring your Plumeria inside, and you're going to put it basically in a dark closet. It's kind of interesting. I mean, you can leave it in the house, it can be light, but it's going to drop all of its leaves. So a lot of times people who live in cooler climates, they'll put it someplace cool, it's going to drop all of its leaves, or you can pull them all off if they're taking too long, and then just leave it there until about the end of February, March, bring it back out again. It's no problem. We have basically the same thing here, where it does go dormant, but it usually takes sometimes it's like January before mine lose their leaves. So it's a short period of time, and then just be patient and understand that the weather has a lot to do with it, and know that, some people say, well, mine never went dormant this year, and it's just, it'll lose leaves, it'll just lose them in a really weird fashion.
How tall is that plant going to grow?
The pudica, I think it can get like 15 to 20 feet.
But you can keep.
Sure. Oh yeah.
That one's so beautiful. I think it's so neat. What's nice about this one too is that these call for a very obvious kind of style to your garden, whereas I feel like this one's pretty universal. It can go into a lot of different styles.
It can.
It could be almost modern. It could go into something.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be more of a tropical look. This can definitely go anywhere. Yes?
So it's probably not wise to put it near a sprinkler.
No, it would not be wise to put it near a sprinkler. You don't want water on the leaves. Most plants do so much better with just water at the base of the plant. So, yes. You could put it in a pot if it raises that up for the sprinklers. That would be super helpful.
Our winter is okay to leave it out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't need to take it in. So she wanted to know, do we need to take them in, or
Although,
can we leave them out?
if there's like a frost warning or something, what I've done is I just take a sheet and I throw it over the plant just to be safe. I have some Michaelias as well, and when they were really young, we would just throw a sheet over it just to kind of keep it a little bit warmer. We have not, but there have been frosts. And some people here might live in places where, you get a little frost warning or something.
It was fine. Why don't you take it to Wisconsin? So it's funny that you said that.
There you go.
So if you're watching, hi. Yeah, she came in with a friend of hers, and they were both buying it. Her friend lived in Laguna, but she was taking it on the plane back with her. So she was trying to buy the smallest little one like this, because so many of them were so branched out. So she was trying to find something easy, so she'd have to hold it on her lap the whole time.
And I guess the thing that I really just want to impress upon everyone, is that Plumerias really are easy. They're easy, and I would say we answer a lot of questions by email through our rogersgardens.com website. A lot of questions. I would say the majority are about Plumerias, and I think, wow, they're so easy. They are so easy. Yes, you can push them a little, and you can really work with them, and then sometimes they can get a pest or something, but for the most part, they are usually very, very easy. That people don't kind of equate them with the ease of what they think. I don't think succulents are that easy, but people think succulents are easy. They can be easy to plant. They're just a lot to maintain. Plumerias are even easier. Much easier, and you can go away for a week or two and not worry about them at all. So, just to let you know.
Any more questions?
I have one in a pot, and I've noticed over the last 2 years, only like 2 of the stems bloom. Does that just mean the other ones aren't mature enough, or do they rotate?
They're not mature enough.
Okay.
Yeah, new
But at
stems
some
will
point
take
they'll
longer.
all- Okay, there's hope.
Yeah.
There's definitely hope. Yeah, for sure.
Taylor, do we have any questions at all?
Ron's been answering them pretty consistently
Oh.
in the comments.
Okay,
So.
that's great. Well, thank you, Ron.
Yeah.
He's like, He's like sitting up there typing away. Thank you, Ron. He's probably far more succinct than we are, where we're just like, whatever, they're easy, I promise.
They really are. I mean, I have a friend who inherited a couple of really big ones from a house. And the backyard had been severely neglected, and those were the only things nice and big and full and gorgeous when she came in. So we started landscaping around those and planted some new ones. And hi Jess, if you're watching, I know she's getting impatient for some of her younger ones because her big ones that she doesn't do literally anything to are big and full of flowers and amazing. They're white, they smell fantastic. Now she'll know that they may be haunted. But her younger ones that I bought, I got some really interesting colors. Looked like this when I gave it to her with no flowers. And I know she's one of those ones impatiently watching it every day, like, when you get a flower? So it's going to take a while, but she'll get some really interesting, cool colors as well. Yeah.
Yes?
I have a neighbor who moved into the house next door, and he didn't want the Plumeria. He said he didn't like it. It had no flowers or anything.
How come people not like Plumerias, Sarah?
Well, he gave it to me. He's different. So I said, sure, I'll take it. Then I looked at it, and there's 3 different things in it.
Stems? Or
It's been
Yeah.
grafted.
So I put it in another pot, a bigger pot, and so now I have one of them is white, one is yellow, and the other one's pink. So someone put them.
how neat.
Yeah.
So
And-
she got a grafted Plumeria,
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
where someone had taken stems of different colors and grafted it onto.
It was high though. It wasn't small. It was.
We've sold those in the past. We've had them, and it's really funny because, again, Plumerias are one of those plants that no one is interested in until they flower. It's like,
Hummingbird saying hi.
good morning.
World.
Yeah, he really did just have to come in, make his face seen, and now he's sitting over there. Okay. Yeah, so there are, and it's funny, I've actually grown one that looks like this, and I have a lot of white and sort of, we call them rainbows back in the day. Now everything has a name. White, and then the pale yellow. And I got one of those, and I thought, oh, this is going to be so cool. And it's just like, if it doesn't smell, I'm like, why would you even grow it? But they're pretty. They're really, really pretty. I just really like the smell. I'm just
Everybody's gonna make a beeline
addicted.
for this one.
Yes,
If you don't
and we have
buy it,
tons of
please
them.
Come smell it because it is
And
seriously, it's sensational, as it says.
It is. It's sensational.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the same too.
Well, I think that's about it. Are there any more questions?
Really quick for the Facebook viewers, they want to go over the products one more time. So the fertilizer
okay.
and the insecticidal soap.
So the fertilizer is Grow More. The Grow More, the all-purpose is a 16-16-16, usually with a purple banding like this.
This is a kelp-based
Yes.
fertilizer, which is pretty neat.
You mix it with water. The flower and bloom is 14-26-26. I was backwards on
The
this.
bees.
And the bees are coming down. With the blue banding like this. The spray this spray works practically on everything. This is insecticidal soap. I think if you're a gardener and you have any kind of plants, this is something you should have in your arsenal.
All the time.
It works on practically everything.
And it well, actually, we should also talk. I don't have it here, but so oil-based soaps versus water-based soaps. That's water-based. It's very light. It's very easy. You can use something like neem. Neem oil is an oil-based. So if you have whitefly or scale or something on this, you would want to use an oil-based because it's going to smother them, whereas that one is going to saturate the pests. So it's there's a reason why there's 2 different kinds of pesticides.
Yeah, it's a contact. It gets on the bugs and it dries them out, basically, is what this does. So from the inside out, they dry out. The copper spray is what we showed. That is for all your fungal issues.
Especially the rust.
Rust, powdery mildew, the black spot too, and then the other one we had was the disease control.
Disease
That also
control.
works well on those kind of things as well.
Disease control is really cool because it's a fungicide and a bactericide, just in case you have some sort of bacterial spot or something, which is not real common, but it does happen. So, yeah.
cactus mix for planting it in a pot. Super great. You don't have to add anything to this. It's good to go and ready right away for a container. And then
we have pumice. But you can also use perlite if you like perlite. Perlite is great. Just don't add things like vermiculite or anything like that. That's going to hold on to water. And peat moss and things like that. Those all hold onto the water. You don't want to do that. You want it to drain through, just like you're in Hawaii.
Yeah, just think volcanic sand.
Volcanic, yeah, well that's also Mexico, Central America, South America, also that super volcanic soil that's going to help percolate through. And then, yeah, it's really fun to learn a lot about Plumerias, to tell you the history and where they come from and all the different cultures. And I really like how South Asian Pacific cultures have adapted this as a really, really integral part of their life.
And then all of you just got 10% coupons, so everybody who's here live in
Woohoo!
person gets a lovely little coupon to spend today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Don't forget to our Instagram and Facebook people, just let you know we have rogersgardens.com for all your shopping needs. We have our Instagram account, we have our Facebook account, and really fun is our YouTube account with all of our videos. It's really fun to subscribe and learn all about every kind of plant. We've been making videos for years, so you can go back and see young Sarah and Suzanne. and you can see young Ron. Taylor's probably done a video in there. No? Yeah, so anyway, thank you so much for coming, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.